Okay, folks, so looking at the transaxle diagram here, it is slightly different, but there's a lot of similar characteristics between the transmission versus the transaxle. The difference is this guy right here. This is the input shaft or input main shaft, and this is the output shaft. So the input is different now. It's not an input attaching to the output. It is actually all one piece. All the gears that are on the input main shaft are fixed gears, so similar to the cluster shaft that we used to have. This end right here will have the splines on it that matches the clutch splines. So this piece here, all in this area here, is the bell housing. So flywheel, clutch, pressure plate is all found in this area here. So whenever the clutch is turning on my input shaft, all of these gears are turning. These guys underneath are our speed gears. So I have my first speed gear, I have my second speed gear. I have my 1-2 synchronizer, so if I slide over here, locking this gear in place, I've now created a power flow. So through my input main gear into my first fixed gear, into my first speed gear, into my synchronizer sleeve, into the hub, through the splines, and into this piece right here, which is called the output shaft. This gear right here is the pinion gear. The pinion gear is fixed to the output shaft, so whenever my output shaft is turning, the pinion gear is going to turn. The pinion gear is always in constant mesh with the ring gear. The ring gear is inside the differential assembly. It is bolted to this case right here. So whenever my ring gear is turning, the differential is turning. On this side and on this side here, you'll have your axle shaft. So they actually slide through and spline to this little guy right here, which is called a side gear. So whenever my differential is turning, so it's going basically end over end, the axle shafts are turning, which my wheels are out here, are now turning. The only difference is it's all internal of the transaxle assembly rather than having a drive shaft that has a pinion gear at the end of it that's then mated to a ring gear. All that stuff is still the same, it just in a slightly different operation. I still have fourth gear 1-to-1 ratio because these gear teeth have the same number of gear teeth on this speed gear here. So 30 teeth and 30 teeth, that's still a 1-to-1 ratio. Now the trick is when we get into a 5-speed transmission. So when we look at a 5-speed transmission, we end up with a third shaft. Sometimes it's called a 5th speed shaft, sometimes it's called a speed shaft, and other opportunities sometimes come up as a balance shaft. It does not obviously stack up 3 in a row like this, because this guy right here is called my 5th pinion gear. This is actually in mesh with my ring gear. So whenever this shaft is turning, this pinion gear is turning just like this one was, and it's in constant mesh of the ring gear. What it actually looks like is 3 shafts kind of stacked up in a triangle space like that. I have a YouTube video that I'm going to load up for you guys to take a look at it, but in essence that's what it is. So they're always in mesh with each other. So if they are input shafts driving, this is a speed gear. This is my 5th speed gear. If I had 6 speeds, then I'd have a 6-speed gear over here. It is freely spinning because remember this is my main shaft, they're all fixed there. This gear is freely spinning, so that means this shaft isn't really getting driven. It's going to go along for the ride because my pinion gear here, my 5th speed pinion gear, is in mesh with the ring gear. So it's going to be turning, but not getting driven in that range, unless the synchronizer slides over, locking my speed gear onto that shaft. So if I was looking at a power flow from that, I'd be coming through my input main, and notice anything unusual? My 4th gear actually drives my 5th gear. It's all about gear teeth ranges, so it doesn't make any difference. All it does is now have a larger gear driving a small gear. Still gives me an overdrive condition. It just eliminates one of those extra gears. Anyway, so through my input main shaft, through my 4th fixed gear, up into my 5th speed gear, synchronizer is going to slide over, locking that gear onto place. So through the sleeve, through the hub, through the splines, through that shaft and into that pinion gear, that 5th speed pinion gear, now driving the ring gear, and no difference like before, through the actual axle shafts driving the wheels down the road.